Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the public forum before the ordinary meeting of Council, being the 19th of June. We have three residents registered to speak. The first one is Mr. Nick Corbett. He's against the recommendations in item 9.2, draft medium density study. Mr. Corbett. And look, you've got as much time as you want. I don't stick by the 5 or 3 minute rule.
Okay, great. That's on now? Okay. Look, thank you very much for that introduction. Thanks for having me today. It's a real pleasure to be here. I guess the key question that we're asking is how do we deal with our shared spaces and our shared assets? And in my view, the answer should be a local one, not one that's imposed from above. And I think in the Southern Highlands we have a very significant set of towns and villages that have come to exist over the last 150 years through very careful stewardship by many great men and women, and they've been built over certain densities with certain characteristics which create sort of a very settled and attractive urban landscape, which is much loved by residents and visitors alike. And we saw that with the recent Bridgerton Festival in Bowral, how popular that was, and how much that resonated with people. And so I think there's a real risk that if we, loosen the control. If we loosen the controls that we have, that we risk losing the very cachet that drives our economy. And I don't know if we can actually fix the so-called housing crisis in the Southern Highlands. I think it's to my mind, I've looked at the economics of the situation, and really the issue is one driven by demand, not supply. The cost of building a house has increased 40% since COVID. We have insurance rates for domestic building just went up by 53%, where the federal government target is 90,000 houses below target. So we're being asked to do something which we potentially can't achieve, and I think the risk is at the end of the process we could end up having weakened some of our local controls. Now, up until a few years ago, the council understood the importance of ensuring that we did retain our wonderful places, and they had all, we can see this in the local strategies, the LEP, the DCP, the Community Plan 2031, the strategic plan. I think they had some really good comments in them which talk about looking after the local character and heritage of the places. And I don't think infill development and so forth actually speak to what the Southern Highlands is all about. I think we risk imposing a planning, we can see what that planning outcome looks like when we go to Western Sydney. I think locally I'm really also concerned about when we adjust the planning controls, we invite bad actors in, and they can see the loopholes in the new regulations. If you look at the State Planning Policy 2021, there's a provision for seniors housing. If you go to Kangaloon Road and Mossvale Roads in Bowral, you've got seniors housing up and down those streets, and that's now been sold as luxury townhouses between $2 and $3 million for people from Sydney to come and live in. So it's not actually meeting the needs of the local community, and it's not providing affordable housing. So there's some risks once you start meddling with those carefully crafted controls that council's put in for many years, that you allow other people to come in and find those loopholes. I'm also very concerned that the Bowral in particular where I live was very much based around the importance of landscape, both in design and also in the urban habitat, which has very little protection, and that's the gardens, the trees, the deep soils, and these are all sort of essential to the Southern Highlands. When you start doing infill development, you risk losing those things. It's also very costly to retrofit infrastructure, such as increasing the sewerage, increasing the, there's the impacts on schools, hospitals, roads, everything. So there's a big cost to the community. So for me, I guess a true diversity of housing would be to have choices that people can make. If they want to live in a leafy town or suburb, maybe come to Bowral or somewhere on the North Shore. If you want to live in an apartment, go to central Sydney. If you want to live in a different type of place, choose your place. But I don't think every single street should have a diversity of housing and should try and tick every box. I think we need to retain the essence and the character of the places that we have, and we should also respect the careful legacy and the stewardship that's occurred over the last 150 years in these great places.
You confuse me, because you wanted to talk about the draft medium density study. What specifically do you want changed?
I guess my view is I don't agree. If you want to look at that level, I don't agree with having a diversity of housing. I believe that we need to retain the existing level of density. I don't believe an infill development is a good idea in Bowral, Moss Vale and Mittagong. I think it's an approach which will not benefit the local residents and will lead to a lot of long issues in terms of. So that I guess they're the two big picture things. I mean, I didn't want to get down in the weeds because I wanted to talk about the conceptually. I think that we have a very what we've got here already works. We don't need to go around changing it. We should actually be strengthening the controls to preserve what's there rather than bringing in changes which actually mimic what's happening in Western Sydney, which with the benefit of hindsight, we can see it doesn't work. And we also have seen, as I said, on Kangaleen Road and Moss Vale Road, the impact of putting in well-meaning changes which then can be exploited by people and don't necessarily benefit the local community. So I think what we've got here needs to be protected very carefully, and the council's role should be actually to safeguard the wonderful places we have rather than making change which I feel are being driven by outside forces. They're not being driven by local requirements.
You understand local government is a creation of the state?
Well, I knew you were going to say that, but it is. We're part of the state, and the state reflects what's happening at the federal level. But there's also a point that the law and all the levels of government actually respond to the people, so you could turn that around.
Have you read item 9.1, the council's housing targets put on to us by the Department of Planning?
I have, and I know the council negotiated the targets, and there's been a lot of discussion around that as well. So I am fully aware of that.
Look, it's not my role to enter into dialogue, but you haven't really given me much direction for where you want this report changed. But the officer who introduced this matter will address the matters raised that you have. But this is not a huge change to what the council has. And you said the former council did such a great job in maintaining this community.
Well, I'll give you two examples. If you go to, I think what I don't want to see is I don't want to see replication of Kangaleen Road, and that's now creeping up onto my street, which is Aitken Road, and with the seniors housing going up there, and it then gets it's almost like rezoning by stealth. So I'm very concerned that when we make what seem to be well thought out changes, that they can actually be exploited by bad actors, and then you start losing the very essence of these towns and villages. So I think there's a real risk, and I can actually see the changes that have occurred in the last 3 or 4 years. To me, are just terrible. To me, it's a dog's breakfast when I go down Moss Vale Road or Kangaleen Road. I think that's a terrible legacy that we've left, which has made the place worse, not better. And I'm worried that will be what Bowral might look like in more streets in coming years, and I'm very concerned about that.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you.
The next person is Mr. Barry Anstey. He's against the recommendation 9.3 update and draft Winter Carriby Community Heritage Study. Mr. Anstey.
Thank you, Mr. May. I've read the report 9.3 for today's meeting. I'm a little bit surprised at a couple of things that came out of that report. Basically, on page 20 of the report, at the bottom page, it says that there's a note, the owners within the northern southern extensions to Berrima Landscape Conservation Area and the Sutton Forest extra landscape conservation area were not notified due to the proposed late implementation of the areas. These owners were consulted at a later date. Now, that's a document that's for the council agenda today. The documents that have gone on exhibition, the background, if you read the report from Mr. Stars, he was quite particular on page 7 of his opening remarks. In preliminary discussions, council staff has recommended that final notifications be sent by registered mail to the legal owners of each property to avoid any future claim that appropriate notification and consultation was not carried out. It should be understood that occupiers of properties are not necessarily the legal owners, and the regular mail delivery is often cited as an excuse for claiming non-notification of council's intention to list. He also made comment in relation to the conservation areas on page 3 of his report, saying that detailed mapping of the individual component elements in the proposed heritage conservation areas is not included in the study, despite some information about individual properties being provided. This does not allow appropriate assessment of contributory, non-contributory, neutral and detracting elements to determine the future management of the proposed area. Future statutory mapping should be include this information by the use of colour-coded representations on planning maps. So the situation we've got, he also, in his assessment of the Berrima Conservation Area, and let's be clear, under the community study that was done, the recommendation in relation to the northern southern Berrima Conservation Areas was that they not be implemented and to come on at a further time. He took the view in his report that they should be included. He also based that report on the fact that he said no submissions were made in objection to the proposed extensions. Well, of course no submissions were made in objection, because what was put on exhibition was the fact that it's not going to be proceeded with and the people weren't notified. Now, you know, this is a very serious issue in terms of notification and where we go. And it's only come to light by the good report of Susan Stannards, where she says these people haven't been notified. Now, that being where it is, and this thing's currently on exhibition till the 30th of June, you, as the leader of this council, have to make a decision. And my view is, based on the information that's here, that you need to make a decision to abandon or defer the northern and southern areas being part of this process at the moment, so that people can be properly notified. Yeah, well, that's where I see that it comes to. I mean, I addressed this at the planning panel, and to be honest, I was a bit amazed at the planning panel that if you read the declarations of interest of the managers of the panel and the peer review, and the fact that the protagonist of this report was in the audience and interrupting the chairman and asking questions. To my mind, it doesn't pass the pub test, but anyway, we are where we are. And I mean, if the protagonist of the report was interested in what was going to be said, they all could be viewed online after. There was no problem that he had to be in the room interrupting. Now, the panel made a report to do nothing. It says, we're not going to interfere with anything, just put it on exhibition. Now, that's not an appropriate response for the panel. And, you know, I sat and listened to some of these people talk about the fact that listings and the way that they were being affected by it. It was quite disturbing. So to see that come out in that way, and then the report that's on now is, you know, it says here on the 15th and 16th, to consider the outcome of the public exhibition, make recommendations to proceed to gateway determination. It shouldn't be as positive as that. It should be to determine whether to proceed or not proceed. You know, the alternative's not provided. And that's preempting, you know, the decisions. And I don't think that the council stands in a good view to preempt decisions in that manner.
It doesn't preempt. It doesn't preempt. It says the intention is to go to Gateway, and that will depend on the recommendations of the panel. Now, are you suggesting that Mr Stass was at the panel meeting interjecting?
No, I didn't say that. I said the protagonist of the heritage study. You well know who that is.
Oh, okay, I understand that. But that person wasn't on the panel
He was sitting in the audience
the whole time.
the whole time, taking notes, asking
Oh,
questions.
It's a public meeting. I can't.
I agree with
I can't control that.
I agree with it's a public meeting, but in the interest of the declarations that were given, it's not reasonable for him to have attended.
Well,
But I
that's
accept
a matter for others. I have a view on that too, which I'm not going to say. But look, the peer review, I think generally has been very, very well received in the community, and the panel has now requested, in effect, that the peer review go on exhibition. Now's your opportunity to make a detailed submission. It's not a rubber stamp.
I understand what you're saying, but Mr. May, the people, everybody's property and properties within the conservation areas, other than Berrima South and North, have been notified by council by letter. Those people haven't, right?
So you're saying that you still haven't been notified that it's
Still haven't been notified.
Oh, I don't know whether that would be right, but let the officer deal with that when the officer considers it. But I must say I'd be amazed and disappointed if they haven't been advised that they're now the subject of further consideration.
There's five people that were in that zone that have spoken to me and have said they haven't received any notification. Now, I agree with what you're saying, but that's a matter for you to investigate.
Well, it's more a matter for the general manager, but the general manager's present. But let's just hear what the officer has to say first. Okay, thanks very much.
Yep.
Next person is Mr Vincent Bonello of Highland Tip Trips against the recommendation in item 10.14 Domestic Waste Management Service Review.
That's right to go. Thank you for giving us the time to have a say here. Appreciate it. My name's Vince Bonello. My wife Sally is with me. We own Highlands Tip Trips, a business we started 36 years ago from the ground up. Do you want to crank that up or?
No, just pull it close to your mouth.
I don't do whisper very well.
And look, just take your time, there is no hurry.
Yep. So we started the business from the ground up 36 years ago. We're the longest operating waste operator, I wouldn't call us a contractor, that's ever operated in the Highlands. No one's operated that long. But things are about to change. We heard some whispers at the tip that things were about to change, and I inquired with Clint McAllister as to what was happening or what could be happening or what he could tell me without having to shoot me. And he updated me on whatever was available at the time, and we've been in contact since then on and off as timelines are reached. And the nearest we could get to where we are now was only a couple of weeks ago when he sent us a list of the roads that council intends to service as of the 1st of October in implementing their new waste strategy, which includes capturing 2,000 or 3,000 residences that aren't on a council service, aren't currently on a council service. So if council implements that on the 1st of October, as I understand it, council is of the belief, or staff are of the belief, that there are that many residents out there that aren't serviced by a waste service, waste collection service, which really isn't right. We've got 1,600 odd customers, plus or minus a few, but it's reasonably accurate. So they're spread right throughout the Shire, and the roads that council is looking at servicing, there's 79 roads on the list that council is looking at servicing, and we service, where is it? So we service 430 customers along those routes, so they would be captured by council. Council would also be driving past 74 roads that we also service, and we service 320 customers along those roads. And they're lesser roads. They're mostly dairy lanes, bush tracks, camel tracks, whatever. They're off-road stuff, some of them. Now, whether council will ever service those areas is that's down the track. But so once council implements their stage 2, that'll leave us short of 430 customers, and it'll leave 320 without any availability of a service at all. So it's really got a net zero benefit in offering the service at that stage. What we're proposing, and further to this, council's just issued their tender for the contract, I believe, for the waste removal contract, which they're looking at commencing 1st of July 2026. And between now and then, the tenders will close. They need to be assessed. A selection needs to be made, which will include negotiation as to what changes the prospective contractors may want to make, and what council will accept, and vice versa, what council expects and what the contractor will accept. So in the interim, if council's taken well, I won't use that term. If council's the 430 residents that council is intending to start servicing from October 1 make up 26% of our total business, and the remainder, the 320 that we'll still be able to service, will be 16%. So it becomes a question of, is it worth our while continuing, or do we pull the pin on these other customers that we've got, because it's just not viable for us to continue it on that level. So if council then comes through in July 26 and signs up all the rest of the customers, then we're out, and that's fine. I understand that, but what I'm asking is, I believe it would be better for council to put off commencement of stage 2 until they know exactly who the contractor will be and who that contractor is going to service, and council knows all that information, and rather than chop us off at the knees halfway, allow us to operate, cover everybody that's being covered, and that wants to be covered. And come July 26, we can walk away from it, and we'd still be in business up until then. With the implementation of stage 2 now, there's a big chance we may be out of business by October 1, and there's a lot of residents left without a service.
So, you finished all?
Yeah.
Look, so you're saying that this stage 1, whilst it'll affect you, it won't kill you?
It'll affect us. It may kill us in that area. There are other areas that council doesn't go down, like Tuggelong Road, Canyon Lee Road, Wombian Caves Road, and all these main roads obviously have little tentacles off them that we also service. And if you implement stage 2, that may kill us in that area, cut us off at the knees, because we might have to decide, look, it's just not worthwhile going down there. We're driving past all our previous customers that you've signed on, and we're heading to service, whatever it works out to, 2/7 of the number. And if you delay it till July 1, 26, we'll continue to service those customers, and everybody will be serviced that we've currently got, and it will remain viable for those 2 years until you implement the entire project.
Look, one of the reasons why the council's gone to tender now is not to accept the tender. It's more that having accepted a tender, the operator gets time to prepare, and that makes it a level playing field in the marketplace. Because as you know, you just don't click your finger and buy a garbage truck.
Tell me about it.
Yeah. Well, you understand because you're in the industry.
So you're saying the tender has been let?
No. The tender's just this week. I think I read it's been advertised.
Yeah.
But even that's a challenge with the government's new rules for tendering. But look, no doubt the officer will respond to some of what you've said. I don't know whether I've instigated this, but I obviously started it because I was asking questions of the staff in relation to the council's obligations, again, statutory obligations, the same as with Mr Corbett.
That were legislated in 1993?
No. This is the FOGO requirements. Do you understand FOGO?
I have been told what it means. Tell me again.
Yeah, well, it means the amount of waste we have to divert. The best I can say about the former council's approach to the collection of garbage in this shire was that it was lazy. That's the best I can say. They had no way of conforming. I think it's by 2030, we have statutory obligations. So the council could not conform with it. This is a very environmentally sensitive community, and in my village meetings and locality meetings, everybody's been talking about garbage. Now, not about your collection service, about the council's lack of service to ratepayers. And the offerings, and I've always taken the view, not only at Windsor Carry but other councils I've been at, that what's good for the residents of Moss Vale in the collection of garbage should be the same at Canyon Lee. It's one in, all in. And now there are obviously some locations where it's just absolutely impossible, and I think there'd be some impossible for you too. But do you provide, how many bins do you provide in the service?
However many they want. I'm in the garbage collecting business. The more they put
out.
Yeah,
but do they recycle with you?
No, and I tell customers we don't recycle because we average a kilometre per bin that we empty. So it's just not viable to run 2 trucks, let alone 3. And when you're servicing most of your customers on acreage, why the hell they would need a green waste bin is beyond me. Pure lack of imagination.
Well, look, I don't
I
want to
mean,
get...
people have pet dogs and they throw out trays of meat and they'll go and buy a can of food, dog food.
Look, I don't want to get into
Yeah.
those arguments. All I'm doing is, in effect, the council is making sure that the council can comply with its statutory obligations. If not, it's in trouble.
Yeah.
And then, what do the residents of the main areas say? They're let down by their council in the collection. Look, I'd be interested in what you've been talking to Mr. McAllister along the way.
He's been tremendous help.
Yeah, well, I'm pleased to hear that, because the council is a community council. We're here to help.
Yeah.
We're not here to disadvantage. But at the same time, as I say, wherever I've been, in Robinson, everywhere, people talk about the garbage service and the lack of the council's commitment to providing a service to its residents.
Yeah.
Now, you've filled the void. But from what I'm kind of picking up, you're filling the void, but you're not recycling, and you make that very clear to them.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of customers, and there's a lot of opportunity for recycling, and this is not easy.
There's a lot of them that already do. Like I say to them, if you want to recycle, if you're conscientious enough, and you can get to Moss Vale regularly enough, you can take it for nothing to the tip. But if I was to put a truck on the road and do a recycling service, when I go to unload it at the tip, I've got to pay the commercial rate for the putrescible rubbish to tip it. So I've got to pay $300 a tonne to drop off recyclables, and they can do it for nothing.
Yeah, and there's levies payable by look, people don't understand. Everything in government is complex. Nothing's easy. But look, we have a requirement. We must adhere to the FOGO.
I'm not saying don't or you shouldn't.
What you're saying is try and negotiate with me to make what I'm doing viable to the 1st of July 2026.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, look, is more a matter for the general manager and the staff to talk to you about, but you've got to remember at the same time that the council has its own obligations, and I hear what you're saying, but I don't know whether I can help you, because the council has to comply, and this is a very, very environmentally conscious community. So I think that's about... Mr. McAllister, no doubt, will address some of the things you've said when he introduces the matter. Okay?
All righty.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
So don't go, because you'll hear what they have to say.
Yeah.
But if you're already in contact with him, I think he'd understand what you're on about already.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay? Thank you.
All righty. Thank you.
Does anybody else wish to be heard? Okay, well, we're running a bit late. If we could, we'll start the council meeting at 3:45. If everyone's happy with that. Thank you.